Arjun Madhavan looked exactly like what he was trying not to be: different. At 16 years old, he stood barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, with a slight frame that made him appear younger than his classmates. His thick black hair was always perfectly combed, his clothes were pressed and conservative, and behind wire-rimmed glasses, his dark eyes held an intelligence that seemed to apologize for existing. When he spoke, it was with the careful precision of someone whose first language wasn't English. His slight Indian accent, softened by 3 years in America but still noticeable, marked him as an outsider in the hallways of Westbrook Academy. What nobody at the prestigious private school knew was that Arjun Madhavan was the son of Vikram Madhavan, one of the wealthiest tech entrepreneurs in the world. His father's company, Madhavan Industries, had revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence, making him worth approximately $8 billion. The Madhavan family owned controlling interests in dozens of companies, including the investment firm that held the mortgage on Westbrook Academy itself. Vikram Madhavan could have bought the school outright with his quarterly dividend payments. Arjun knew his family was comfortable, but his parents had deliberately shielded him from understanding the magnitude of their fortune. He attended Westbrook on what he believed was a partial scholarship, lived in a modest house in the suburbs rather than the family's primary estate, and received a small allowance like any other teenager. His father drove a simple Toyota to parent meetings, wore off-the-rack suits, and presented himself as a middle-class software engineer. The deception was complete, designed to ensure that Arjun developed character and empathy rather than entitlement. This careful construction made Arjun the perfect target for the predators who stalked Westbrook's hallways. Brandon Fitzgerald was American aristocracy distilled into its most toxic form. At 17, he possessed the kind of casual arrogance that came from 5 generations of inherited wealth and social position. His family had attended Westbrook for over a century, and their name was etched into half the buildings on campus. Tall, blonde, and athletically built, Brandon commanded respect through a combination of family prestige, natural charisma, and carefully calculated cruelty. As captain of the lacrosse team and president of the student council, he ruled Westbrook's social hierarchy with an iron fist. His inner circle consisted of 2 equally privileged accomplices. Marcus Hawthorne was the son of a federal judge, blessed with his father's sharp legal mind, but cursed with a sociopathic need to humiliate others. Lean and predatory, Marcus served as Brandon's chief strategist. Connor Walsh came from old banking money, his family's firm having financed American industry for 3 generations. Stocky and aggressive, Connor provided the muscle when psychological warfare wasn't sufficient. Together, they had created a sophisticated system of social terrorism that kept Westbrook's student body in line through fear and intimidation. Arjun's first encounter with them happened during his second week at Westbrook. He had been sitting alone in the library during lunch period, working on an advanced calculus assignment when Brandon's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Well, well," Brandon said, "what do we have here?" Arjun looked up to see 3 figures looming over his table. Brandon's smile was perfectly friendly, but his eyes were cold and calculating. "I'm sorry," Arjun said quietly, his accent slightly thickening under stress. "Am I sitting in your spot?" Brandon's smile widened. "Listen to that accent, boys. Where are you from exactly? India, Pakistan, Bangladesh? They all sound the same to me." "India," Arjun replied, already sensing the trap being laid. Mumbai, originally, but we've been here for 3 years now." "Mumbai," Marcus repeated, deliberately mispronouncing it. "How exotic. Tell me, do you miss the curry and what do you call those little huts you live in?" "Slums," Connor added helpfully. "They're called slums." Arjun felt heat rise in his cheeks. "We lived in a nice apartment, actually. My father works in technology." "Technology," Brandon said, as if the word amused him. "What kind of technology? Running a call center? Fixing computers at Best Buy?" The 3 boys laughed, their voices echoing off the library's high ceilings. Mrs. Coleman, the librarian, glanced over from her desk but made no move to intervene. She had learned that challenging the Fitzgeralds was a career-limiting move. "My father develops software," Arjun said, with as much dignity as he could muster. "Artificial intelligence applications." "Artificial intelligence," Marcus repeated mockingly. "Well, maybe he can develop some real intelligence for his son. Something to help you fit in better. Maybe an app that translates curry breath into English?" From that moment forward, Arjun's experience at Westbrook became a daily exercise in calculated humiliation. Brandon had identified him as the perfect victim, intelligent enough to understand the insults, isolated enough to have no allies, and foreign enough to be considered permanently other. The harassment began subtly, with mispronounced names and cultural stereotypes disguised as friendly curiosity. "Hey, Apu," Brandon would call out in the hallways, referencing the Indian character from The Simpsons. "How's the Quickie Mart business?" "Arjun, right?" Marcus would ask during class discussions, then immediately follow with, "Sorry, all those Indian names sound the same to me." Connor's approach was more direct. He would accidentally knock Arjun's books out of his hands while walking past, then apologize profusely in an exaggerated Indian accent. "Oh, so sorry, my friend." "My mistake, yes?" The psychological warfare escalated systematically over the following months. Brandon discovered that Arjun brought homemade Indian food for lunch and made sure to comment loudly about the smell whenever he opened his containers. "Jesus Christ, what is that stench?" Brandon would announce to the entire cafeteria. "Did something die in your lunchbox?" "It's just curry," Arjun would reply quietly, his face burning with embarrassment. "Just curry?" Marcus would add, with theatrical disgust. "It smells like someone shit in a spice cabinet." They began timing their harassment to maximize public humiliation. During morning announcements, when the entire school was gathered in the auditorium, Brandon would make sure to sit behind Arjun and provide running commentary on his appearance. "Look at his hair," Brandon would whisper, just loud enough for surrounding students to hear. "It's so greasy you could fry samosas in it." "And those glasses," Connor would add. "He looks like a gas station attendant." "Thank you, come again." The mockery spread like a virus through Westbrook's student body. Students who had never spoken to Arjun began repeating Brandon's jokes, creating a culture where casual racism was not only acceptable, but rewarded with social approval. Teachers who witnessed the harassment pretended not to notice, unwilling to confront students whose families donated millions to the school's endowment. Arjun endured it all with the same quiet dignity his parents had taught him. He attended classes, excelled academically, and tried to make himself as invisible as possible. But every day, as he listened to their laughter and felt their contempt, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered about the power he could wield if he chose to reveal his true identity. "My father could buy this entire school and turn it into a parking lot. He could ruin their families with a phone call." But Vikram Madhavan had raised his son to believe that true strength came from character, not wealth. That respect had to be earned through actions, not inherited through birthright. Be patient. Show them who you are through your actions, not your bank account. The harassment reached its crescendo during the spring semester, when Brandon discovered that Arjun had been accepted into Harvard's early admission program with a full academic scholarship. The news spread through Westbrook like wildfire, and Brandon's jealousy transformed into something approaching pathological hatred. "Harvard?" Brandon sneered during chemistry class, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They must have really lowered their standards. I guess they need their diversity quotas." "Affirmative action," Marcus added knowingly. "That's the only way someone like him gets into a real school." "It's not fair," Connor agreed. "My dad donates tons of money to Harvard, but apparently being American isn't good enough anymore." The 3 locations where Arjun faced the worst harassment were carefully chosen for maximum impact. In the main hallway between classes, Brandon would stage elaborate performances designed to draw crowds. The cafeteria became a theater of cultural mockery, where Brandon would provide loud commentary on Arjun's food, clothing, and mannerisms. But it was in the locker room after gym class where the harassment became truly vicious. "Look at him," Connor would announce as Arjun changed clothes. He's so skinny, he looks like one of those kids in the UNICEF commercials. His parents probably sent him here to find an American wife, Marcus would add. You know, green card marriage, classic Indian strategy. Arjun's breaking point came on a humid Friday afternoon in April. He had been having a particularly difficult week, with 3 major exams and a college application essay due Monday. His stress levels were already elevated when he arrived at his locker after final period to find a crowd of students gathered around something on the floor. As he approached, the crowd parted to reveal an elaborate display that Brandon had constructed during lunch period. Someone had printed dozens of photos from Google Images: impoverished Indian street children, overcrowded slums, sacred cows wandering through garbage-strewn streets, and stereotypical images of convenience store workers and taxi drivers. The photos were arranged in a circle around a small altar-like structure made from textbooks, topped with a crude cardboard sign reading, "Shrine to Arjun's Homeland." But the centerpiece was what made Arjun's blood run cold. Someone had obtained a copy of his family photo from his student file and photoshopped his parents' faces onto the bodies of beggars. His dignified father, Vikram Madhavan, was depicted as a street sweeper. His elegant mother was shown as a woman selling vegetables from a cart. The image was printed on poster-sized paper and hung above the shrine like religious art. The crowd of students was taking pictures and videos, laughing and pointing at the display. Several were posing next to it, making exaggerated praying gestures and mock-serious faces. The scene was already being uploaded to social media. Brandon stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, wearing an expression of supreme satisfaction. When he saw Arjun approaching, his smile widened into something genuinely cruel. "Hey everyone," Brandon announced loudly. "The guest of honor has arrived. What do you think of our little tribute to your heritage?" The crowd turned to stare at Arjun, phones still recording, eager to capture his reaction. He stood perfectly still, looking at the defaced image of his parents, feeling something fundamental break inside his chest. "We wanted to help you feel more at home," Marcus added with mock sincerity. "You always seem so sad here." "Plus, we figured your parents would appreciate the publicity," Connor contributed. "I bet they never had their picture in the paper back in Mumbai. Now they're famous." The laughter that erupted from the crowd was the cruelest sound Arjun had ever heard. This was not just jokes and tea.